Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hello, BRIONY here from Kit Guru, and in this review I'm taking a look at the Asus TUF GT501 gaming case. This case has a recommended retail price of around £149 here in the UK, and I've got it here in front of you so we can take a look at it before I put any components in it. It's a little bit easier to do while it is completely empty. So as you can tell, it is a really big full-size case. The way I've got it sat on the desk looks like it pretty much is the same size as me. It certainly does have a big footprint. When it comes to the dimensions, it is 545mm tall and 552mm deep. So this case from Asus is part of like their TUF Gaming Alliance, and that range of products does definitely have quite a unique aesthetic, and I must say I do quite like it. So it has sort of like this industrial military kind of design, and I do really like the black and grey coloration and the kind of rugged look it's got going on. I do really think it is quite a refreshing change from all the sort of black and white box cases we've been getting recently. This case certainly has a lot more character. Taking a look at the front of the case, you can see that it does have quite an aggressive angular design, and it's also where you'll find a little image of the TUF logo as well. So it's sort of like a shield with wings, and I don't think it does look too over the top. In general, the branding on this case is pretty understated. It sort of lets you know that it's part of the TUF lineup, but it doesn't go too over the top. It also has these really nice big grills on the front as well, so I think these are going to look really good with the RGB lighting shining through them. And each of the grey panels on this case, they have a really nice sort of grey metallic paint job, and then they've gone for sort of a black splatter effect, which I think does definitely look quite unique and does of course add to the overall sort of military kind of rugged aesthetic they've got going on. You'll also see that on this side panel here, this is actually a tempered glass window. I've removed it just for the sake of the camera because it does reflect back quite badly, but it is a really nice feature, so you can obviously see all the lovely components you're going to put inside this case. Taking a look at the top of this case and more towards the front as well, so they're nice and easy to get to, you've got all the different ports and the power button for this case, and I do like them because they aren't sort of plonked up the top there. They are sort of fitted in this nice looking hexagonal face, and they're nice and easy to get to. So you've got a power button, you've also got two USB 3 ports, and there's also a jack for a microphone and a jack for a headphone as well. Also, something that you've probably already noticed that I really quite like, and I think is quite unique about this case, it's not something I've seen on a case for a while. It seemed to be quite a popular thing to add on cases a few years ago, but recently we have been seeing a lot more sort of sleek minimalist designs, but it has got these two really big sort of woven cotton handles. I do obviously think they add to the overall aesthetic. They do match really well with sort of the TUF theme that Asus is going for, but they are also quite functional, so they seem to be really well made. They attach on with Velcro, so you can remove them if you wanted to. They do feature a little bit of the TUF branding and things, but they can also hold up to 30 kilograms, so that is obviously quite a lot of weight. So once you've got a completed build in this case, if you're sort of a fan of going to LAN events, you want to take a really big show-off system, those handles are obviously going to come in quite handy, really. Handles are handy. Also up the top here, you've got a removable dust filter. It is attached on with magnets, so it's nice and easy to take off and clean, and it does also have a little bit of sort of the camo print going on as well, so of course it does match the overall theme of this case. So when it comes to taking a look inside this case, the side panel that I've already removed is actually very easy to take off. So it's got two screws up the top here, they're little thumb screws, and it has got a hinge system at the bottom. So when you undo those screws, it doesn't just sort of drop like some of the tempered glass side panels do. You do sort of hinge it out. I do think that is quite sort of like a nifty system, and it does seem to work quite well. Taking a look inside, you can see that it has got plenty of space going on. So you've got enough space for up to an EATX motherboard, and also all the standoffs look like they come pre-installed as well, so I do like that. It does save me a bit of time when it comes to building. The cooling in this case, you've got quite a lot of options as well. So it does come with 3 pre-installed RGB fans in the front of the case, and those are static pressure fans, so they're made for sort of pulling air through the grill, through a radiator, etc. And then on the back of the case, you've got a 140mm high airflow fan. Unfortunately, it though, this back fan isn't RGB like the rest of the fans, it's just a plain fan. So I do think that is a little bit of a shame. I wish they had put another RGB fan in the back of the case. When it comes to overall cooling support, in the front you can have up to 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. In the roof of the case you can have the same thing, and then in the back you can either have 120 or 140. And then when it comes to radiator support, you can have up to 360mm in the front, you can have a 360mm radiator in the roof as well, and you can also have up to 140mm radiator in the rear. I've just swizzled this case around so we can take a look at the front panel as well, because I'm going to talk about the dust filter. So the front panel comes off with a firm pull. It is actually surprisingly easy to get off, because normally I do struggle a little bit when it comes to taking the front off of a case. And the dust filter itself doesn't actually come pre-installed, so you do have to install it yourself. So when you get the case, if you want to put this on, you will have to rip the front panel off yourself. But it is quite a nice filter. It's got a really good mesh on it. The design actually looks very, very similar to the filters you get on the front of Corsair cases, like with a hexagonal thing going on. It has got a strip of magnets down this side, and then it's got a couple of little slots on there. So it slots into the front of the case, and that should do a good job to sort of keep the dust out. Obviously you do have to take the front panel off to actually clean it, but I don't think that is too bad, particularly as it is quite easy to remove. Taking a look around to the inside of this case, you can see that along the bottom it has this really huge PSU shroud. It is made of plastic, so it's not metal like the majority of the case, but I do think it looks pretty decent. You've got a little bit of the TUF branding on the front, and it's also got some handy slots in it as well for cable management, so I think those two are definitely going to come in handy for me when I'm trying to thread the I/O cables through. You'll also notice down this other end it has actually got this little cutout. So this is made for if you're going to be doing a water cooling loop in this build. You've basically got somewhere to put your reservoir, and you don't actually have to remove the PSU shroud. So this little slot also, if you are just going to stick with an air-cooled build, in the accessories box you get a little plastic panel, so you can take this out, you can slot that into that slot and cover that up if you're going to be putting hard drives or something under there, and then you can sort of keep those hidden. If we take a look inside the accessory box as well, you'll see that it is really quite basic. So this case obviously isn't that budget, but you don't really get too many extras with it. So you get a bag that has all the screws and things you need for building. You've also got some tweezers, cable ties. The manual that comes with this case is also quite straightforward, but I do quite like it. It's got some good images and things in there that show you how to put the components in the PC and sort of tell you about the different options for cooling and things. Taking a look towards the back of the case, you'll see that it has 7 PCIe slots, so plenty on there, and they're also removable with screws as well, so they're not those sort of horrible snap-off ones. You've also got a further 2 PCIe slots, so you can vertically mount your GPU. On this case, it will be quite close to that tempered glass side panel, so I think maybe if you're going to be putting a water cooling loop in this build, that will look really nice if you've got a funky block to put in here. But it is quite nice they've added that feature on this case. And then also towards the other side, you'll see that it has got 3 SSD brackets, so you can have your SSDs around the front of the case, you can show them off and things, and they are removable as well. You don't have to screw the SSDs directly onto the motherboard tray. You can attach them to the bracket, and then the bracket attaches onto the case using thumb screws, and they've also got some really well placed cable management slots also. Before we take a look at what's going around the back of this case, I will just mention about the bottom. So it has got 4 plastic feet on the bottom, so it is raised slightly off the desk, so that allows more airflow for the power supply. They are equipped with 4 rubber pads, so there's 1 on each, so it does grip to the desk really well. I don't really think it's going anywhere. My desk is wobbling, but the case isn't wobbling. And then also around the back, it has got a slide out dust filter for the PSU, so that does feel very good quality. It's got a really nice sort of mesh on it and things. It's nice and easy to remove. So I don't think it was added as an afterthought or anything. It is a good feature, and it stops all that horrible dust getting in your power supply. So me and the case have done a little bit of a switcheroo, so I can take a look and show you about what's going on behind the back here. So this side panel I can actually remove on camera. It does work the same way as the tempered glass side panel around the front of the case. You've got 2 screws at the top, and then it sort of hinges out and then slides out really easily. So as you can see, the cables that come with this case are coated in a nice black plastic, so that's obviously going to look much nicer for when it comes to cable management and things. And they are already tied down as well with some Velcro that does have a little bit of the TUF branding, so I think that is a sort of nice little feature that makes my life a bit easier when it comes to finally building in the case. You also see that it has this big bundle of cables. So these cables here are for the RGB fans in the front of the case. Unfortunately, in the bag I can actually see a Molex connector, so we're going to hope that that's optional and I can use the SATA connector that's actually in there as well. Otherwise I just can't stand Molex, but I'll see what that's like when I actually come to building in the case. It doesn't look like there's too many options really for threading cable ties through. You have got some really nice ones here for the Velcro, but otherwise there isn't a huge amount of places to sort of route the cables, because you've got sort of one up here, one over here, and then a couple here, I guess. Maybe if I route them carefully it's probably good, but I like to have more cable routing options than maybe not enough cable routing options, if that makes sense. And then also you can see that the case has got some rubber grommets, so that's better for sort of protecting the cables. I do think it looks a bit nicer. But unfortunately there aren't rubber grommets on all of the holes. So you can see these ones up the top here, they've sort of been neglected, and then the ones for the SSDs and things haven't got any rubber grommets on, and then it's sort of underneath here hasn't got any rubber grommets on. I mean, the build quality is good, so there's not any sharp edges or anything, they're really nicely finished, but I do like having them just because it does look a little bit nicer. Underneath the PSU shroud, it looks like there is a decent amount of space to get all those cables through. They've also got a really big hole here, so that gives you more access to sort of get the cables through, get them all routed correctly and things. And in general, I think the depth for cable management looks pretty good. It's 30mm, so it's not huge, but it is better than you do get on some cases. Also with this case, you will see that it does have some more brackets around the back here for hard drives. So we saw 3 SSD brackets around the front, and then it also has these 2 brackets here which are for 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives, and then it's also got 2 brackets here for 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives, and those ones you access from around the front of the case, so they're under the PSU shroud. They're also removable, and these holes around the back here for cable management purposes. When it comes to the overall build quality in this case, I must say I was reasonably impressed. It does come with the TUF names. I was expecting it to be a sturdier, hardier case, and I think it does definitely do that. The actual chassis is made with up to 1.5mm thick galvanized steel, so it is really, really solid. Also, it apparently has a special coating that's made to reduce sort of scuffs and scratches and things, so I guess that does come in handy if you will be taking this big show-off system to a LAN event or something. It does feel very, very well built. There's no real rough edges or anything, and everything does feel very solid. There's very little flex to the body. There is actually quite a bit of plastic going on though, so this underneath the chassis is mostly made of metal, but sort of these external features that have got sort of a metal panel on the top, but that's only really there for looks, I guess. The actual beefy part of them is made of plastic, but even the plastic does actually feel very solid and actually quite high quality. And also I imagine it's probably there to keep the weight down a little bit, because otherwise this could probably be a very heavy case. I think this case does definitely live up to the TUF name, and in general I'm certainly quite impressed with the build quality. So now we've taken a look at this case empty, it's looking very, very promising, so I'm excited to get some components in this case. I have got some matching TUF components, so I should have a pretty good looking build by the time I'm finished. So with the power of editing, let's jump forwards in time and find out how I found building in this case. can see, I've now got the finished TUF build here beside me. Here is a full list of all of the components that I opted to use in this build, and the other things that I've done as well. So I actually opted to remove the PSU shroud in the end. That wasn't just because I wanted to challenge myself with the cable management. I actually did it because I have this matching TUF PSU and I kind of wanted to show it off because I think it matches quite well with the overall design. When I removed that PSU shroud, I also removed some of the hard drive brackets as well. So underneath the PSU shroud, on the end here, we had 2 hard drive brackets. I took those out, they're very easy to remove, and that also revealed that this case actually has a dedicated mounting bracket that is suitable for mounting a pump or a pump res combo. So if you want to do a full water cooling loop in this build, that's really going to come in handy. So when it comes to aesthetics, now that I've finally got components in this case, I must say I do really like it. Of course, it does look pretty much the same, except now it has a little bit of an RGB glow going on. Those RGB fans at the front of the case are all lit up and they do come through at a pretty good brightness as well. I have removed the tempered glass side panel, but it does actually have quite a decent tint to it. So even though this case does have RGB lighting, it is actually quite subtle because it doesn't shine out too brightly from inside the case. But you do get a nice bit of RGB at the front there, where the RGB lighting from the fans is sort of shining out through that front grille. When it comes to actually controlling the RGB lighting on these fans, they are Aura Sync compatible. So what that basically means is that they can synchronize up with other RGB components you've got in your build, and they also can be controlled with software as well. So it's just a case of plugging the 4-pin RGB connector onto the motherboard. I'm using the Asus TUF motherboard, so it has an RGB header. I then used the other RGB header to plug in the CPU cooler. So as you can see, I've got sort of a synchronized lighting effect across the fans, the motherboard, and the cooler, and all of those are controlled using the Aura Sync software, which is very easy to download, and you've got a whole load of different effects and things to choose between. So also with the RGB fans, you do get a couple of other connectors as well. So I'll start off by talking about this one. I think I mentioned it at the start of the video. I could see a Molex connector. This is basically what it is. So the fans do come with the splitter, so they do only actually take up one motherboard header anyway, but if you wanted to power the fans at full speed all the time, or if you really do run out of fan headers on your motherboard, then they also come with this sort of splitter that turns the fan connector into, so they can be powered by Molex basically. You also get an RGB controller as well. So if you happen to have a motherboard that wasn't compatible, so if it didn't have a 4-pin RGB header, you can still control the lighting on the fans. So they plug into this, and then it's got some settings for like the speed, the lighting effects, probably the colors and stuff as well. And this is powered by a SATA connector, so you don't have to use a Molex with this, which is quite nice. But what I thought is that this is going to be situated inside the case, so it is slightly frustrating. Like obviously if you get your fan profile set up and things, it's quite easy to do, but once you've got your case set up on your desk and all the side panels are back on, you can't easily change the fan settings on the fly. So I thought it might have been quite nice maybe if Asus actually had an external fan controller, so you could change the lighting effects and things, but it is nice that they do chuck in an RGB fan controller just in case you don't have a compatible motherboard. When it came to actually building in this case, in general I did actually find it a very pleasant experience. I did make a slight blood sacrifice to the IO shield, unfortunately, but in general I did find building in it very easy. So as you can see, like I said, I took out that PSU shroud. That was really easy to remove. Just a case of I think there was a couple of screws down here. I can't remember. I think it was a couple of screws and then it slides out sideways, and that was very easy to take out. The hard drive bays were very easy to take out, and then obviously I had loads and loads of space for manoeuvring in the motherboard, getting that into place. Also with this case, you can see that I have put a really big CPU cooler in here, so there is obviously plenty of clearance for a nice big cooler, and you've also got a huge amount of length as well if you want to put in a really long graphics card. When it came to getting everything connected up, this was once again very easy to do. The clearance at the top of the motherboard for getting the 8-pin into place was plenty of it basically. Sometimes it can be quite tight, but particularly because I didn't put any fans in the roof as well, there was loads of space. The 24-pin, unfortunately, the sort of rubber grommets didn't line up with where it's situated on the motherboard, but there was plenty of space to get it bent round. Also at the bottom there was a nicely positioned slot to get the IO cables through. Then also if you are using the PSU shroud, you will also have a couple of extra slots for cable management as well. And then when it came to installing the SSD, that was very easy to do. to, because of course that bracket is removable, so I could take it out the case, screw it down on my desk, then slide the bracket back in, just one thumb screw to get it into place, and then those cable management holes to get the SATA connectors in are very, very well positioned, so that was also very, very straightforward. And I do think it does look rather neat having the SSD around the front of the case. I've now flipped this case around so we can take a look at what's going on behind the scenes. I've removed the rear side panel so you can see my cable management, and I must say I did actually try pretty hard in this case, probably to make up for the fact that my 6 EATX reviewer kind of shoved the cables in there, but I must say I didn't actually have to spend too much time on it. This is a really nice case to work in when it comes to cable management. Those Velcro straps that came with the case, they were really, really handy for routing all the cables up the middle, and in general there wasn't too many moments where I sort of wished there was a cable tie spot that wasn't there. I actually found cable managing this case really quite quick and easy, which is unusual because normally it takes me a little while and it doesn't normally end up looking quite as nice as this one. So I did challenge myself by removing the PSU shroud, but I think I ended up with a pretty good result. And also when it came to putting the side panel back on, you can see there is quite a large bundle of cables, and I must say it does actually stick out quite a way. So I was slightly worried, but it actually went back on easily first time. So in general, I think building and working in this case is a really big thumbs up. It's very easy to work with. I think, as you can probably tell, I'm really quite liking this case so far, but how does it actually perform? So it has got those 320mm fans in the front of the case, and it's got a plain 140mm fan in the rear, and when it comes to sort of the noise levels, I don't think it's too bad at all. It obviously does have some audible fan noise. It's not designed to be a silent case, it hasn't got any noise dampening material or anything, but 39.5 decibels, you can only really hear it if you put your head up close to it and are purposely listening for fan noise while the PC is idle. Under load, I must say there was a noticeable increase in noise. You do sort of expect that though, as those fans are going to start to spin up as the temperatures go up. It increased to 44.5 decibels, so that is noticeable, but if you're someone that's going to be wearing a headset, you won't hear it at all. And also the fans as well, they don't make a weird sort of noise or anything. They do create noise at a pitch that isn't annoying, if that makes sense. Not like something like a laptop that makes that sort of jet engine noise. It's sort of quite a deep kind of hum. So in general, this is quite a quiet desk companion when it comes to a case. When it came to the cooling performance in this case, I took an idle temperature to be about 10-15 degrees above ambient, so that's 30 for the CPU and 35 for the GPU. I then did my gaming session, I then did my 10-minute stress test, and I took a reading of 70 degrees for the GPU and 80 degrees for the CPU. So that GPU stays nice and cool under load. It's obviously got plenty of airflow in order to breathe. The CPU at 80 degrees, it does sound quite warm, and this was actually my first case review using this 9th gen processor, but for a 9th gen Coffee Lake CPU that's air cooled, that is actually about average. It's sort of what you expect to get because they seem to do run a little bit warmer, so it seems that the airflow in this case is pretty good, and it doesn't really have a problem. Overall it does perform quite well, and just being sat here as well, I can actually feel that rear fan chucking out quite a lot of air. Overall, I really do like the GT501 from Asus. I think it is a very attractive case because it has got that tough aesthetic. It is certainly a little bit different, and I must say I'm quite a big fan. You've got plenty of space for lots of different hardware. It's also very easy to build in as well. It makes building a PC very straightforward. Also, when it comes to this case, it is actually practical as a case because it performs well. You've got lots of dust filters to keep all the components inside clean. It's also got a really sturdy construction and those carry handles, so that makes moving it around really easy if you want to take it to a LAN event or something. I think maybe the price tag of £150 does make this case slightly overpriced. It is sort of I don't know, more than I would expect it to be. I think if it's sort of like £20–30 cheaper, then I'd be like, yeah, this is great. So if you can get it on a good deal, I really don't think you can go wrong with this case, and I think that Asus have done a really good job. If you like this video from KitGuru, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Please remember to hit that subscribe button as well. It really, really helps us out, and we appreciate every single one of our subscribers. There's also a bell icon so you can get a notification every time a new video goes live. Other ways to support us, we also have a Patreon, and we are very grateful to all of our patrons that have already signed up. You can get exclusive giveaways and things, and you can join our Discord server where you also get sort of an exclusive chat you can join. And also as well, KitGuru has its its own merch. I'm sporting one of our lovely t-shirts, and you can find those over on our Teespring account, or take a look at the link that will be in the description below. Thank you for watching.